Thank you for that introduction. I'd like to begin with a question: who is like God? This question is a cosmic word, similar to the Delphinic inscription, "Know yourself, the riddle of mankind." It might sound odd, but the name of the archangel for the autumn is, who is like God? You know this question as the name Michael, or Michael, or perhaps Mike. Michael is one of the 4 archangels who have ruled in sequence each of the 4 seasons. Plus, he is one of 7 archangels who have ruled in sequence each of the 7 periods that comprise the time of transit for the sun to pass through a zodiac sign. This passage takes 2,160 years, or about 310 years per archangel. During these 310 years, each operates as a time spirit. The actual time spirits are the next higher level, known as the archi. The archi, archangels, and the angels comprise the 3rd heavenly hierarchy. Eventually, every being of the hierarchies will graduate to its next level when it has finished its divine purpose and goal. Since the 15th century, certain spiritual beings have been advancing when ready. This is the case with Michael, who began his turn as a time spirit in 1879. When his turn as time spirit concludes in about 2200, he will not return to the level of archangel, but will remain as an archi. There we have another riddle. For who will take Michael's place in the rank of archangel? Who takes his place as the seasonal archangel? Who takes his place as the time spirit? With a new archangel in each of these positions, how will that affect life as we've known it? Each archangel has a gesture. Michael is known to be taciturn. He speaks through his countenance, offering approval or not for deeds. His approval comes with support, but there are no pre-approvals. He will not impact our free will. After Michael has advanced, who will fight the dragon? Today, Michael can stand upon the dragon, the Ahrimanic. Who will stand upon the dragon after 2200? To help us answer such riddles, let's look a bit closer at ancient as well as relatively recent changes in the spiritual world. First, I'm going to show you a diagram. The original plan for humanity was to follow the top curve. So let me get the slide up to show you this. And here you see the 4 levels, the astral, etheric, physical, and subphysical. And this is what was intended for humanity. But because of Lucifer's successful temptation, this became what we had to accomplish due to the fall of mankind. So I will stop sharing and go back to just speaking. During our evolution, we have had, with decreasing depth, direct access to spiritual beings, changing to inspirational access, to imaginative access, to an experience of gods at certain times in their temple. Then, in 1250, the spiritual world closed its doors to all people, including initiates. Humanity could only experience through their physical senses the wrought works of the gods. Former initiates had to rely on their memories, their etheric bodies, for their work during those times. Before these doors closed in 1250, preparations were being made. Around 869, a meeting in the spirit occurred. Present were the recently deceased Harun al-Rashid and his wise counselor, who presided over the world's cultural center of the 9th century, Baghdad. Also present were the knights of King Arthur, who had carried the stream of the pre-Christian cosmic Christ into Europe. In addition, Aristotle and Alexander were present. All of these were initiates. The intention was to agree and coordinate what to do in their next incarnations. But an agreement was not to be reached. One path would lead to Averroes, Francis Bacon, and Amos Comenius. The other path convened a spiritual conference that completed by 1250. Platonists from the school of Chartres, such as Bernardus Silvestris and Alanus ab Insulis, had just passed through the gate of death. They met with the Aristotelians, who were about to incarnate, individuals who would be Magnus Albertus and Thomas Aquinas. They forged a strategy for the end of the 20th century that intended for both groups to overlap their incarnations and to collaborate for the next stage of Christianity. In 1258, Baghdad was sacked and its center of learning, such as Gandhi Shapur, were destroyed by a Christian army, Mongols from the east under Hulagu. They were Nestorian Christians. Incidentally, the Mongol Empire mandated religious tolerance. Some of its armies converted to Islam, some to Nestorian Christianity, some remained pagan. As an aside, the founding fathers of America were inspired by this concept of religious tolerance from Genghis Khan and wrote into the American Constitution the concept of the separation of church and state. I've mentioned the great change that began in the 15th century. Archangels had until then been the administrators of the human blood. They now began to teach the angels to take over this job so that they could move on to administer the system of nerves and senses. At that time, the seraphim, cherubim, and thrones were carrying over the cosmic intelligence into that member of man's organization, which we call the system of nerves and senses, the head organization for the angels, for the archangels, this time, to administer. After the pre-1250 spiritual conference, Michael called for a school to prepare for his turn as the time spirit. This Michael school from the 15th to the 18th century worked at the level of inspiration. The goals for the coming centuries were set. Then, from 1841 to 1879, a great battle took place in the spiritual world, and a class of angels were cast down into human consciousness. The victory belonged to Michael and his forces. The losers, one might quip, were us, the humans, who now had to deal with these laggard angels. To balance this, starting in 1880, a new set of beings got access to human consciousness, namely the Vulcan beings. They were last here during the Atlantean epoch, and it was their oracle that was betrayed. This led to new forms of black magic that caused the divine beings to destroy Atlantis with a deluge. With these laggard angels who had previously been used to block access to the spiritual world, now removed, Kali Yuga could be brought to an end in 1899. 33 years later, the appearance of Christ in the etheric could begin. Then, in 1998, the third cycle of 666 could happen. An influence from Sorat, Christ's adversary from the sun, brought a new impulse to human beings. Some years from now, we'll likely be able to distinguish that impulse. Many confuse Sorat and Ahriman. They are not the same. It would be incorrect to think of 1998 as a possible birth date for the body that will house Ahriman's incarnation. But Sorat's impulse will certainly make things easier for Ahriman. What can be said to be responsible for our current situation with its mounting fears? We have 5G, AI, deep state, climate change, global warming, fires in the West and Australia, hurricanes in the Atlantic, pandemics affecting human contact, even education, people dividing into camps, especially political camps, nationalism, racism, genderism, exploitation, greed, fears, and more fears. And it will only get worse. Let me read a short passage from Steiner's lecture called Technology and Art. Everybody is obliged to undergo the battle. In its effects, it is experienced by everybody. There would be no greater fallacy than to say, we must rebel against what technical science has brought to us in modern life. We must protect ourselves from Ahriman. We must withdraw from this modern life. In a certain respect, such an attitude would be an indication of spiritual cowardice. The real remedy lies not in allowing the forces of the soul to weaken and to withdraw from modern life, but in so strengthening these forces that its pandemonium can be endured. World karma demands a courageous attitude in modern life, and that is why genuine spiritual science calls at the very outset for effort, really strenuous effort on the part of the human soul, end quote. We ask, why is this happening? Perhaps seeing current events through the eyes of Michael will help. Another short quote, Michael sees the great events in the Earth's history taking place. That's from the experience of Michael in the course of his cosmic evolution. So he sees the events in the Earth's history taking place, those of the past and those of the future. Long ago, when the spiritual world was concerned with its own battles and needs, it was Michael who brought their attention to a group of poor beings who were, so to speak, huddled in a corner. Humanity. He could foresee that it would be us who would take the human stage of Earth. It was he, the chief steward of cosmic intelligence, who took on the loving concern for us. What is this cosmic intelligence? We can begin to grasp this when we come to realize that between death and a new birth, we are without physical and etheric body. These, in a sense, are replaced by angels and archangels as we sojourn the cosmic realms. This starry structure serves as our blueprint for our coming life, incorporating cosmic intelligence within us. During our evolution, Michael let this cosmic intelligence slip away from him so as to endow humanity with this potential. Michael foresaw how man, in progressing more and more towards his own individual use of intelligence, must meet with these Ahrimanic beings, and how by uniting with them, he might then succumb to them. He knew the danger of doing this because he knew Ahriman would be there to take this intelligence into his own realm where he could modify it to be materialistic. For example, artificial intelligence. Much of the cosmic intelligence has already fallen into Ahriman's realm, and Michael cannot go down into Ahriman's realm to retrieve it. But we can. In fact, only humanity can go there and return. We are his special forces, armed only with our free will and motivated by our love. We can take this cosmic intelligence into ourselves so that we can carry it back to its rightful realm. But by the time we free this captive intelligence and return it to Michael, he will no longer be an archangel. He will be an archai, making our task to return it that much more difficult. You might ask, how does Michael expect me to go up against Ahriman alone? I mean, not only is Ahriman far more intelligent than I am, but his angelic hordes that Michael pushed out of the heavens are now running rampant in our consciousness. On top of that, you and I have an Ahrimanic double hiding out in our body, constantly urging us to act like an animal or a machine. Doesn't it seem like the deck is stacked against us? For us to enter Ahriman's realm, well, isn't it a bit like being cannon fodder? Now, recall those Vulcan beings I mentioned. They've got a score to settle. You see, back in Atlantean times, none of the oracles were betrayed except for one, theirs. It led to black magic that eventually caused the destruction of Atlantis. They want to redeem this. Plus, these Vulcans have their own evolution to complete, and the conditions now on Earth are just what they need to finish up. But they can only do this with our cooperation. What? Our cooperation? Aren't we already busy enough? Now we're being asked to listen to and work with a bunch of strangers? Doesn't it appear that Michael's expectations are a bit extreme? Maybe we can just ignore these Vulcans and let them fend for themselves? Anticipating this, Steiner remarked that if we ignore these nasty Vulcans, they will cause strife after strife, upheaval after upheaval. My goodness, can't we just be left alone to enjoy life? Okay, if we must, how do we even communicate with these Vulcan brats? Steiner does tell us that with the development of spiritual science and its practices, communication with them will come naturally, and it must come, and soon. Did you do your rose-crossed meditation today? Yes, Michael sees all of this. He has confidence in us. Not one of the other archangels are as confident in us as is Michael. Recall that his season is the autumn, a season of the will. Not only the harvest happens in the autumn, but so do wars and popular sports. Lethargy from summer's heat comes to an end. Now in the autumn comes the riddle of the Sphinx, which is, what goes in the morning on 4 legs, 2 at midday, and 3 in the evening? Oedipus gets the answer, man. What does this riddle mean? Michael foresees that we have entered the evening or autumn of our evolution. We reached our physical peak during the Greek-Roman post-Atlantean cultural age. Michael sees that the Earth too is in its autumn, reaching its evolutionary peak during the middle of the Atlantean epoch. We are in the second half of Earth evolution, in decline. In one lecture, Steiner called it involution as we prepare to make our seed for Jupiter, the next planetary condition. What does this mean? It means that the Earth is decaying. Even matter is decaying. And humanity's physical existence is also in decline. Our physical bodies will be withering. By the year 5700, sexual procreation will end. Oh my! How will things continue? Steiner gave the answer in the lecture cycle, The Fall of the Spirits of Darkness, but it is a grim picture. He said that from 5700, actually quite a bit before then, until the war of all against all in around 8000, humanity will need to rely on these fallen angels who, with the help of the Vulcan beings, will find ways for us to build bodies so that we can still be present on Earth. Even the elemental beings of birth and death will be guiding and assisting. Yet all this will lead to our destruction, our necessary physical destruction. Some will say, oh, never mind, it's okay, because by then we'll procreate through the larynx. Michael rolls his eyes. What kind of moral state must the human attain in order to be endowed with such an ability? Such a godly skill won't be ours until the second half of the Venus planetary condition. Before then, we'll need to perfect our ability to call forth the animal. And before that, the plant. Our morality and will must become fully aligned with God's before such a talent is bestowed upon us. Michael sees all this and how, from the Philadelphia post-Atlantean cultural age, that is the sixth Paka, a small group of individuals from around the world will carry human life and culture over to the sixth epoch. During the time before the war of all against all, human beings will find their way into an existence where their lowest bodily member is no longer the physical, but their etheric. Let me repeat that. By 5700, many people will have a relationship to the physical that can be compared to your current relationship to your automobile. Such people will have their etheric body as their lowest member. And who is leading the way? Christ in the etheric. And that is the direction where Michael points. Remember, that Ahrimanic double who joins us in our physical body before birth and leaves just before death? What will happen to it when we no longer go through birth? Michael foresees this too. The double will claim victory by winning for itself the physical realm. As they claim victory, we'll retreat to the etheric, where our evolution will continue. The double, however, will not be able to sustain an upright physical body. Steiner calls this the second fall. As we fell from Eden, the double will fall. A new body will emerge for these Ahrimanic beings. It will look like a spider, but its life forces will be at most halfway between the mineral and the plant kingdoms. We, from that point on, will evolve separately from the double. Most of us, that is, because a portion of humanity who cannot overcome materialism will, out of their own free will, elect to go with these spidery beings into what is called the eighth sphere. Michael foresees all this. His gaze is like a pointing finger. His gaze is not accusatory, but positive and active. Even his cosmic sword points our way, the way we should go. Michael is a spirit filled with strength, and he can only make use of thoroughly brave humans, humans full of inner courage. Cosmic warmth, building now in the consciousness soul, must now be breathed out by all of us into our observation of the external world. Not only must we understand the world objectively in the manner of a spiritual scientist, but we must enter into this understanding with our life of feeling to wrest the world from Ahriman's clutches, filling it with the Christ forces working from within ourselves. Cleverness has been furnished to us in abundance by the last few centuries. But what we need today is warmth of soul, gemut. What everyone must find in his gemut is the match wherewith to light the fire for anthroposophy. Anthroposophy is, in truth, warm and ardent. He who finds this anthroposophy cold and intellectual and matter of fact just lacks the means of kindling it so it may pervade him with its fire. And just as only a little match is needed to ignite a bonfire, so anthroposophy too needs only a little match. But this will enkindle the force of Michael in man. Are the fires in the West trying to tell us something about our times and the call for our inner fire? From the gaze of Michael, we too can see this future for which we need now to prepare. As our past has been mysteries of thinking, so our future will be mysteries of willing. Those who graduate from this school will have come to the point of being able to co-create the next planetary condition called Jupiter. I would like to close with a verse. Spirit triumphant, flame through the impotence of faltering, faint-hearted souls. Burn up egoism, kindle compassion, so that the selflessness, this life stream of humanity may flow as the wellspring of spiritual rebirth. Thank you for your attention to this. Now we can take some questions.